Hi, everyone. Welcome to the stream. We had some technical difficulties. We're going to have to do this with the computer. Bear with us. We'll get this fixed for the next live stream. Can everybody see us okay? Let us know how it looks and sounds. And that's going to be watching for questions and comments. And we'll get started in just a second. Thanks for bearing with us. Looks like we have a couple people joining. Hey, Brandon. Hey, Tobacco John. It's going well, thanks. Except for the live stream, we had some technical difficulties. Hey, JP, thanks for joining us. We have a fish room fever. Hey, good to see you on our live stream. Not quite the quality that I see on your channel. We'll get there, though. Thanks for joining us. Who else is joining us? And I'll let you go ahead and read that off. And what I'd like to do is ask if anybody has any questions that I can answer about geckos, about isopods, about the care of geckos, the breeding of geckos. Let me know how your crested geckos, your leopard geckos, whatever you're keeping right now, let me know how they're doing. And we'll wait for Nanette to check for some questions. If people are joining, go ahead and let us all know who's joining. Okay, can you read from the screen there? We'll do it that way, that's fine. Then that's going to start reading off the questions. Let me throw something out to the group, kind of as something fun. I think some of you, I'm seeing some names that are very familiar with me here. And just kind of throw this out to everybody. If you know me a little bit, see if you can guess my 3 favorite movies. My 3 favorite movies of all time. And I'll ask during the live stream here to see if we can get close to naming those 3 favorite movies. If you know me, you probably know 1 or 2 of them for sure.
Okay, we've got a couple questions here. Billy Boy channel wants to know how you decipher which isopods need drier climates versus the humid ones.
That's a tricky question. And who was that, Billy Boy?
Yes.
That was the toughest question for me when I started this whole keeping isopods, because there's not a whole lot of information out there. If you do go to the Isopods Facebook group and go under documents, there's some great care documents out there. But that was a question that I asked over and over and over again. I'm thinking about keeping this isopod. Should it be dry? Should it be moist? How dry? How moist? All that information really isn't in one good place. So what I would suggest is keep asking the breeders. Come to me and ask me, and I'll give you as much information as I possibly can, because there are differences. If you're not sure, what you can do is, and I had a recent video on this, on geckos, set them up with a variety of environments so that they can choose themselves, so they can regulate themselves. So what I do is I'll set up a bin for isopods, and I'll make like 20 to 25% of it moist, have the rest of it dry, and I'll have sphagnum moss so that they have somewhere that they can go to get that moisture and hydration. Give them that choice between 2 different environments and see which ones they pick. I've noticed that some of my Punta Cana really like the moist side, so I'll extend that moisture a little bit into more of the enclosure. Some of it's a little bit of a learning through experience, but a lot of it is asking around and asking the right people. If you come to me, I'll certainly help as much as I possibly can.
Somebody else wants to know what the difference is between the zebra females and the males.
Zebra females and males. I just saw a post, excuse me, everyone. And thank you everybody for joining. I had just recently asked for to see if anybody knows my 3 favorite movies, and I saw Brandon said Star Trek. Now I'm going to ask Brandon, what do you mean Star Trek? are you thinking of a specific movie? Are you thinking the TV show? I'm sure you're not, but which movie are you thinking for Star Trek? Males and females. I don't actually know males and females for the zebras. I think if you and I don't do this because I really don't like to bother the isopods that much, but if you turn over a female zebra, just like a lot of the different isopods, if they're gravid, you can actually see the pouch expanded. I'm struggling with words here, but you can see that pouch near the posterior expanded, and you can, at some point when they're ready to actually give birth, you can see that pouch actually with little baby isopods, which is pretty cool.
Fish Room Fever says Lord of the Rings. No.
No?
It's not one of your favorites, is it?
It's not.
No.
Probably because you've never seen me. I've watched Lord of the Rings. I like the movies, but it's not, I would put it probably in maybe my top 100. Not to offend anybody, it's a great movie, but not one of my favorites. And that's probably because I didn't read the books when I was younger.
JP's Lizard World wants to know if you always see your knobtail eat or simply put the feeders in the tank and walk away.
Well, that's a wonderful question. And I've gotten into the habit of slowly feeding the knobtails. I really, really, really like to see them eat. So today is a good example. I went downstairs, I was feeding out some other geckos, and I found a couple of molted mealworms, how they're white instead of the yellow. And I collected 2 or 3, and I walked into the gecko room, the leopard gecko room, and fed the mealy. I got a male mealy that likes those freshly molted mealworms, and I threw them in there and watched him eat. Now I've got some. I said mealy. I'm sorry. I meant. I can't think of the name of the. I can't think of the name of the knobtail now. But I'll usually watch them eat at least the first insect before I move on. One of the keys with knobtails is absolutely positively don't feed them too much. It just kind of freaks them out. In nature, that's not what they're used to. They're not used to seeing 5 crickets all of a sudden in front of them. They're used to wandering around and finding a meal, eating it, and then wandering and wandering and wandering and finding another meal. So I generally won't put but 1 or 2 food items in their enclosure at one time. It freaks them out.
Okay, we have a couple movie guesses again. Simply Bettis says 3 favorites: Jurassic Park, one of the Star Wars, and Braveheart. Getting closer.
Braveheart is way up there. Braveheart is one of those movies. Excuse me, my throat. Braveheart is one of those movies. If I'm watching TV, I'm a channel flipper, and I'll change the channel between baseball and movies and the History Channel and the news and back to baseball, and in between pitches, go somewhere else. Braveheart is one of the few movies that I'll actually sit down, and if I find Braveheart on, I'll put the remote down. But Braveheart is probably in my top 10. What were the other 2? Star Wars?
Star Wars, one of the Star Wars.
One of the Star Wars. I love The Empire Strikes Back. I don't know if anybody else, if that's their favorite Star Wars movie. Wouldn't be in my top, probably my top 20, 25 or so. And
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park. Absolutely one of my top 25. Love Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Not one of my top 3 though.
Hi Zen Ginger. She just came in.
Hi, how's it going?
A couple other questions here. What is the better choice? Sure, big words. Tripliculatus or Steindaculus?
Probably Stendidactylus. I don't have my glasses on, so yeah. I'm struggling. Tripliculatus.
Yes.
And watch the table because it shakes the camera. But Tripliculatus are wonderful, wonderful animals. They're small. I could consider them a micro gecko. Their babies are unbelievably small, super small. So if you're going to do Tripliculatus, any of the different species, what you want to do is absolutely have springtails and even dwarf whites for the adults. Do fruit flies for the adults, do micro mealworms for the adults. I love the tails, how they swing back and forth. They can be kept in a very small enclosure. I have mine in about a 5. Um, what's the other one? Stenodactylus. I keep mine in a 10. I've struggled with my Stenodactylus to get babies. I've gotten a few eggs and I'm waiting for some babies now. But they're a fun animal, but they're hidden all the time. They only come out at night. So if you're looking for activity, the Tripioculatus, when you feed them, they're out, they're shaking their tail, they're waving to you. They're just a great little gecko. Stenodactylus are a little bit more shy during the day. Easier to keep, I think, because of their size. You can feed them crickets, mealworms. Tripioculatus, you have to have some dwarf gecko foods for them. If you're into dart frogs, Tripioculatus is a great addition.
Okay, Elaine Smith wants to know if she adds isopods or springtails to her Pac-Man frog tank, does she need to add charcoal, substrate, worm casings, or jungle mix?
Good question. I wouldn't. What I would do, and you really want to be selective on which isopods you add to a Pac-Man enclosure. What I would do is I would go with dwarf whites or dwarf grays. Throw some pieces of wood in there, throw lots of leaves in there, have an area designated just for those isopods. So if your enclosure is, I don't know how big your enclosure is, let's say a 10-gallon, you want one part of that tank devoted to the isopods so that they can find refuse from the Pac-Man frog. Because that Pac-Man frog is going to dig around and root around and make his little place. So those isopods will be fairly okay with that, but if they have their own area that they can get to, they'll appreciate that.
Okay, what would Angie wants to know, when will we be seeing the secret isopod?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly.
The secret isopod that you talk about. No idea what you're talking about.
And then
How was that? Did I
that
handle
was
that pretty
good.
good?
That was
Yeah.
perfect.
All right.
And then Gary wants to know how many frogs you were getting. None.
Actually, I have like 4 big projects that are going to be coming out probably within the next month and a half or so. The frogs are part of a big project, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to set up 2 enclosures, 2 exoterras, and have them going for probably about a month or so, maybe 3 weeks with, dwarf whites, some springtails, get it established first and then go with some dart frogs. How many total will I have? Probably never more than maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 tanks of dart frogs, or 30.
No.
We'll see.
Not happening.
We'll see.
Gary, stop instigating us. Gretel, I'm sorry to hear about the dog, and I know that's a hard thing to go through. They had to put down, he's a dog walker, and he's happy for our distraction tonight.
Oh,
and
sorry.
He's had a rough day
so
today.
Very
sorry about that.
Think of the good times.
Yep.
We've gone through that, and bring back good memories. Talk to your friends and family that shared with the good memories for your puppy.
Brandon Fowler, no, I will not be holding it at the party. Thank you. Let's move on.
We'll see at the party. So
No.
I asked earlier, I'm going to throw this out there again. I asked if anybody knows my 3 favorite movies. We have one that's really close, and that's Star Trek. And I'm asking Brandon, what exactly does he mean with Star Trek? Because he's so close.
Somebody said The Patriot.
The Patriot's really close. I love Mel Gibson in The Patriot. I'd say probably my top 50, if anybody cares.
Robert wants to know, is it common for a leopard gecko to bruminate if the temperature is around 66 degrees in the room?
Absolutely. And Gary knows leopards better than I do, but if it's 60 something,
66.
If you don't have a warm spot for that leopard gecko, it will brumate. It absolutely will. The feeding response will drastically go down. If you have a warm spot, it's probably going to sit on that warm spot for all winter, and it may or may not go through brumation. But if your whole tank is in the 60s, it absolutely will go into brumation.
RN wants to know if you use a respirator when you're dealing with your dubias.
Good point. I've had issues with dubias now probably for 3 or 4 years. And I had a close friend down in Chicago give me the full I've got a video I think I did about a year ago. I've got the full respirator. So when I'm working specifically with the adults and the frass from the adults, I wear the respirator. But I think Nanette knows that I have another option of working with the dubias. You want to tell everybody what that option is?
Me.
Yeah. So, I'll work with the baby mealworms, baby dubias. I'm fine with them. I have no issues at all. But if I'm working, even if I'm feeding the adult dubias, within a minute, I can start feeling my breathing getting heavier. So, unfortunately, I've gotten away from working with the adult dubias, and Nanette has fortunately been helping me in that area.
The original Star Trek movie.
Is that Brandon's
That's
guess?
one of them. Yep.
Brandon, you're wrong. You were so close too, buddy. So close.
Somebody else came on with the Wrath of Khan.
Wrath of Khan. It was a good movie. I like the originals. I can't stop watching Star Trek, the 3 new movies with Chris Pine as Kirk. If nobody's seen the new Star Trek, if you have any interest, I was not a Trekkie. I like the original movies, but if you have any interest in that whole series, watch the first one. The second one's great. The third one is outstanding. I can't stop watching it. So, Brandon, I'm going to give you like half of a point for Star Trek because it is Star Trek. I think the movie is beyond the number 3 movie in that series. Wonderful, wonderful movie.
Maybe do a time lapse.
If you have, you want to turn it? Sorry, that's all right. You got it. Find it. I'll find it. You're not finding it. Oops. Folks, we're experiencing some technical difficulties again. So, Brandon, I'm going to give you half a point for that Star Trek because it's beyond. Love the movie. So there's 2 other movies that I have in my top 3. Actually, that would be number 3, and I have my first and second choice. If anybody is interested in knowing what my top favorite 3 movies. The last one is the Star Trek Beyond. Any other questions?
The next one would be: do you raise arsenic pictus?
What is it?
ACARTHI, arsenic pictus.
Anorithid. I can't say the word now. I have all kinds of different varieties. I'm struggling with the word morph because it's kind of tricky with the picta geckos. My primary goal with Periodor picta is the bold stripes. Some of the other morphs or varieties I'm working with, but I haven't. And the problem is not a lot of people have these animals. There's just not a lot of them around. So I'm working toward getting more of the picta and more of the varieties. So right now I don't.
Another quick question for you is, would you be doing more foraging videos?
More what?
Foraging videos. Will you be doing more foraging videos?
Oh, kind of like collecting in the
Angie.
wild.
Mhm.
Foraging.
Foraging, that's what I said.
Oh, I'm sorry. More collecting. Absolutely. Excuse me. I want to go more in the wild and let people see what's all out there. I think that it's really super important. And I just did a top 5 beginner isopods. And the number 1 isopod on my list was native isopods, simply because I think people need to get in touch with what these animals are really doing in nature. When I get gecko questions, when I get kind of any questions at all, one of my first responses is think about what's happening with those animals in the wild. Dave Kaufman does some great videos, and he goes out in the wild. He just did a tokay gecko video. He goes out in the wild and he looks at these animals in the wild. He did just a phenomenal bearded dragon video, I think about a year and a half ago. So I'd like to do a couple. Obviously, I can't go to Saudi Arabia or Africa and show some of these geckos. Can I? No, Nanette said no, I can't go. But I can show some of the native isopods that we have in Wisconsin and show how they are living in the wild, and hopefully that will help people, kind of get that sense of how these animals exist in the wild to help them set them up in captive care a little bit better. So yes, maybe I need a guide, Angie, because I know you are like the mountain person of foraging in the Wisconsin area.
She commented back, she can't wait to see you scrounging through the deep woods.
Yeah, my scrounging will be probably within a couple of blocks of the house here. So,
Somebody wants to know, is one of your movies, your favorites, a comedy?
Oh, it absolutely is.
Okay, there's your hint.
So realize that my teen years, this is a huge hint, my teen years were in the mid to late 70s. So think of a comedy, mid to late 70s. Somebody's got to come up with it like that. So
Three Musketeers, Princess Bride.
Okay, I'm going to have everybody leaving the chat. Watch the numbers because everybody's going to leave the chat right now. But I have never watched Princess Bride. Okay, there they go. We're down to one. We're down to one. My mom's watching now, and that's all. So I've never watched The Princess Bride, and I have no idea why. It just has never come up. I've never watched that. And what's the Christmas movie with the sled?
The Grinch?
No, the Christmas Story with the kid with the
Christmas Story.
Yeah. So two movies that I've never watched that everybody in the whole world has watched. So
how easy is it to breed a fat tails?
It's not hard at all. I've had hundreds of eggs. Now, having said that, when I started keeping some of the higher end fat tails about 12 to 15 years ago, I think I got some animals that weren't good, and I got some animals from the wild as well that were probably past their prime. I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of eggs. I've hatched out a handful of babies. Now, having said that, I don't think there's any secret to hatching out African fat tails, and that's something that this year I want to get into more. I'd like to have a couple of the different morphs of African fat tails and work with them again. I have one pair right now, and I'll be working with them this year. But I don't think it's any. If you do leopard geckos, if you do the enclosure a little bit more humid, you'll be all set to get eggs from the African fat tails. I really don't think that they're incubated any different than a leopard gecko. I hope that helps.
Next question. Crested geckos, how do you get them to size and weight on them? How do you get the size and weight on them?
Sounds good. I'm going to answer that in just a second. I see some new names here. Yeah, Hannah. Hi, Hannah. Thanks for joining us. Do I see Crystal? Yep. Hi, Crystal. Thank you so much for joining us. I love watching your channel. If anybody gets a chance, go to Crystal's channel and take a look at what she's doing. Love her channel. How do you get size on crested geckos? Is that the question? I'm sorry. My memory is just like so short. Size. I'm getting a little
weight
bit of
and size.
Yeah. Please wait while we reconnect. I think we had a little bit of a lag there. Sorry, folks. And let me ask, if you haven't hit that like button, let's see a like spike and get that number up a little bit. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone. And thanks for joining us.
Aquaballs just joined.
Aquaballs, how are you doing? Hope you enjoyed the chat. Sorry for the quality of this chat, everyone. We had some technical issues with our camera. We're doing this off of an old laptop, so really apologize for that. How do you get size on crested geckos? That's a super easy question. Feed them more insects. Keep them more, two things. And obviously, the enclosure has to be set up right for a crested gecko. Everything has to be done the correct way, misting, and so on. But two things to get crested geckos bigger, faster. And that's not the ultimate goal to get the biggest, fastest crested gecko. But if you're struggling with a crested gecko that you compare to other people's crested geckos that are a year old and their animals are 50 grams and your animal is still sitting at 22, here's the problem. Number one, you might not be feeding insects, and you have to feed insects. And I start feeding insects after the first 2 weeks of a hatchling hatching out. So I'll start throwing in mealworms, and within 2 weeks after that, and the reason I don't feed right away is I want those crusteds to know exactly what crested gecko diet is the first 2 weeks. I want them pounding the crested gecko diet. I'm feeding every other day. And then after 2 weeks, I start throwing in mealworms, and I'll swear by this. Little baby crested geckos just devour mealworms. They have to be small enough, but not super small. If they're about the size, the mealworms, the distance of their eyes, and maybe a little bit bigger. And I have videos on this. If you ask, in a private message, I can certainly point you to the right videos. Crested geckos need that extra protein, and you have to feed them insects. And after about 4 weeks of after hatching, I start hitting them with duvias as well. So the second factor is temperature. And I'm sure most everybody knows this. Get those temperatures up into the mid 70s at least with crested geckos. If you want to see some size on these animals, juvenile hatchlings all the way to juveniles, make sure you have them at least mid 70s. I like to keep ours at about 76 to 78. 76 to 78. Now, a lot of people say, 80 degrees is dangerous and all, but little babies, I'll swear by this, keep them in that mid to upper 70s. 80 isn't terrible for a short period of time, but keep them in the higher temperatures, pound them with the live foods, and you'll see your animals considerably grow faster.
Is the comedy Caddyshack?
Oh, Caddyshack is in my top 10 for sure. And when you talk about Caddyshack, you're like right there. You're right there. You take another. You don't even have to take a step. Just kind of look over your left shoulder, and you'll see the other movie right behind you.
Gary wants to know if you and him can go on a gecko taping session together and find geckos and tape them.
Interesting. I would love that. What country do you want to go to, Gary? Just let me know. So we're doing a Wally's favorite 3 movies, and we have the third favorite, and that's the new Star Trek Beyond movie. We're really close with the number 2 movie. It's a comedy, late 70s. It's not Caddyshack. So think about kind of that same area of Caddyshack-ish, and you might come up with that number 2 movie. Number 1 is just a classic. Number 1, no, everybody will get it if I give them one little tiny clue. But
no. Groundhog Day?
Nope.
Airplane?
Nope.
Animal House.
Who said Animal House?
Gary Orner.
Gary nailed it. Nailed it. How many just famous lines came out of that movie? They took the bar.
Okay.
And that's all I can say about it. Yeah, or otherwise we'll be canceled. The show will be canceled.
Angie wants to know, she's going down to Tennessee at the end of April, and she wants to know if she will find different isopods than she finds up here.
Let me know if you find different ones. You're probably going to find pretty much the same isopods. I mean, Nasodums, Rankies, I'm trying to think of scabers. You're probably going to find some of the same isopods. You can do, there's a couple of good sites out there where you can do a lookup on the isopods. I haven't checked Tennessee, but I'm sure you can find, the differences between the 2 different states. But I'll be very honest, you're probably going to find a lot of the same isopods.
Hi, Barb. No worries. We're running a little bit off tonight too. Technical difficulties. So I'm glad you could join us. Angie wants to know about millipedes too.
Oh, okay. Is it Barb Haley? I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Barb Haley. I actually have a question from Barb, and I'll ask that, or I'm going to answer that real quick. Angie with millipedes. What about millipedes?
She wants just to see millipedes too. Or is she going to see them down there? Different ones, maybe.
I know that there's the Americana that's kind of spread out in the whole. That's the one that you gave me some of. But other than that, I'm not sure of the millipedes. I'm I would assume that there's different millipedes in Tennessee than there are in Wisconsin because of the temperatures. Barb had asked about a good starter crested gecko. Excuse me, folks. Barb, what did you mean by a good starter crested gecko? Do you mean a morph type, or do you mean an age? Or let me know in the comments, and I'll address that.
Jason, hi.
Who's Jason? Who?
Jason C. He says, I loved your podcast interview with the Strength in Leo's podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Ray Backman wants to know what he missed. He's sorry he's late.
Hi, Ray. You missed everything. If you know, I would just tune out right now.
No.
Thank you very much, Ray, for joining. Ray's been a great supporter of the channel and in my stuff on Facebook, so really appreciate you joining. Ray, one thing that we're doing right now is Wally's 3 favorite movies, and we nailed Star Trek. Surprisingly, Brandon nailed Star Trek, and we named the number 2 movie, and that's Animal House. So you have to come up with my favorite movie of all time, and this is a movie that I watched it last night. I've watched this movie 100 times, and part of it is that my memory is pretty much mush at this point. But and I see something new every single time. But I'll watch that movie all the time. It's a huge movie, and again, think of something. I'll put it like this: it's something I think it came out. It's a series of 3. The third one, I can't say, stinks. The second one is probably even better than the first one. The first one is just a classic movie. Think of some of the top movies in the 70s, and you'll nail it.
Barb says she wants to know what the species in the morph.
The species in the morph.
Oh, somebody just got your movie.
What is it?
Anna, Godfather.
Godfather.
Good job.
I can't say enough about The Godfather. I just think it's a classic. If nobody's, if somebody out there hasn't watched has anybody not seen The Godfather? If you haven't, let me know. My wife's sister and mother both did not see The Godfather, and we watched it a few months ago, and they absolutely loved it. It's a movie that, though, you have to watch a couple, 3 times. It's it was violent for the times, absolutely, but there's such a storyline in that movie. There's so many famous quotes. Leave the gun, take the cannoli. Just a great movie.
Angie's never seen it.
Angie, come over, we'll watch it. What's that?
Hannah's never seen it.
Hannah, gotta see it. It's a classic, but again, it's more of a story than anything. And actually, Godfather 2 is, I think, even better than the original Godfather.
Okay,
I see Zach Miller in the stream. Thank you, Zach, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Barb wants to know species and morph.
Crested gecko?
Mm-hmm, that was what she was asking.
Yep. So for crested geckos, there is only one species, Ciliatus. But for morph, it really doesn't matter. If you're into the breeding, if you really want to get going on the breeding, I can give you tons of suggestions. Look at some pinstripes, look at some red Harleys. There's the Lily White that's out right now that's really super popular and super pricey. And I'm not a huge believer in the Lily White, but that's me personally. But there's a lot of great morphs to go into. If you're not into the whole breeding scene and the specifics about bloodlines and keeping track of 10 lines, 10 generations, get the morph that go out and look online, and I can point you to a couple of sites if you'd like. Go online, look at the animals, look at pictures, and find the one that really excites you. Is it a Dalmatian? Do you like the crusteds? Can you grab poppy seed? We brought up a couple of crested geckos, and I forgot all about them. They're kind of lonely in the cups back there. So we're gonna grab poppy seed. And I don't know if this is gonna come out. It would have on the camera, but on the laptop here, probably isn't gonna come out at all. So again, my apologies. But if you like the Dalmatians, then you can go with something similar to poppy seed, and this isn't one of our, by far not one of our better Dalmatians, but if you like those spots, look for the Dalmatians. If you like red, go with a red. If you like a Halloween, with the orange, go with what really excites you. That's my suggestion. That's my advice. If you're getting a pet, you're going to find that there's going to be a price difference between juveniles and adults. You're going to find there's a big, super difference between adult crested geckos, males and females. Females are going to be 3 to 4 to 5 times as much as males. If you're looking for a pet, get an adult male. They're going to be about $50, anywhere from $35 to $75, and they're going to be just the same as all the other priced geckos. If you want something that you really can work with long term and watch grow, go out and get a juvenile, but don't get a juvenile less than about 2 months of age.
Okay, a couple more questions. Have you thought about getting Periodora gracilis or Periodora Masoli?
Right? Who is this from?
This is from Jason C.
Jason, great question. So I had Periodora gracilis, and one of the most frustrating things for me in the hobby, since I've been keeping geckos for 20 years, was about the time that I got Periodora gracilis. I took on a huge project, multi-million-dollar project, as a project manager for my work, and that sucked me right out of the gecko hobby and the business. Nanette helped as much as she possibly could downstairs for about 2 years and did as well as she could, but virtually I was non-existent in the hobby. I was off of Facebook. I was off of a lot of things, including, having an opportunity to work with the geckos. Nanette did. I just can't believe what kind of a job she did with the animals. All the cresteds were, right on. Everything did really well except a couple of very delicate animals. And unfortunately, the Periodora gracilis we had lost. And that's a tragedy. And I have a lot of guilt now, for losing such just an invaluable animal. Periodora Masoli, I would love to work with Masoli. I really would love to work with. If people in the stream have not seen Periodora Masoli, go online and look them up. They're black with white spangles, and they have the biggest puppy dog eyes you'd ever want to see. They're one of the larger Periodora, but that doesn't say much. Because the whole Periodora genus is smallish, but they're about 3.5 inches in length. The problem with Periodora Masoli, and at least, I got this tainted view of them early on in the hobby, was a lot of wild animals coming in, a lot of collection from the wild of a very, I wouldn't say endangered animal, but an animal that probably shouldn't have been collected because they have very specific needs. I know now in the hobby, people are far more educated and understanding of the needs of these animals, and doing a much better job than they were 15, 10, even 5 years ago. And I might consider it now, but a lot of the Masoli became available were thin and worn out adults from wild caught that were just on the verge of not making it. So I really had a fear of getting some Masoli in and working with them at that time. I don't think that I will in the next year or two, but after a couple of years, I might start looking around for some. But wow, what an animal! One of the top 5 of my all-time. I wish I had a chance to work with those animals.
Zach Miller would like to know which tastes better, Dalmatian or powder orange isopods.
What I'm going to have to do is offer that up in a contest and find out from our listeners and our viewers on YouTube which one tastes better. So anybody that wants to do and I think you're probably shaking.
Sorry.
That's right. Anybody that would like to do a taste test of those 2 isopods and let me know, I will send you an isopod button. How does that sound?
You have to see them taste.
Yeah, I have to see a video. I mean, you can't just say the orange or Porcelio vitata, or I'm sorry, Porcelio magnificus tastes better than a dwarf white. You can't do that. You have to show me a video.
Hannah Hayes has a comment for you. Did you know that the cannoli line in The Godfather wasn't even in the script? It was completely ad-libbed by the actor, and they kept it in the movie.
Outstanding. That's what I love to hear.
Favorite lines.
Yes, that's one of my favorite. And I don't know why it's such a famous line. It's just, you know, again, Godfather, a shooting scene, gang style kind of killing, and the thing that that the mobster, the gangster, comes away with is, you know, leave the gun, doesn't matter, whatever, but take that cannoli because cannoli is good.
Okay, Zach has quite a few comments here.
Uh-oh. I'm kind of worried about Zach because of that last comment. Yeah. I don't know.
One of his questions is, what is the most humane way to euthanize a gecko that is really sick or hatched?
I'll share with you. This is never, ever, ever, ever easy, and I've had to do this a couple of times. I've had, and Gary, or if you're still on the chat, please chime in. I've had a couple of leopard geckos that had the I can't think of the disease now, crypto disease, and one of them I brought back. Daily feedings, daily cleanings. Spent as much time with one gecko as I did, 400 other geckos in the facility every day. And I brought one of them back, and the other one I couldn't bring back, and it just kept deteriorating and deteriorating. And after a few weeks of this crypto and working with it, I just decided that it wasn't going to make it. So what I did was, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. This is what I did. I put the animal in a baggie and I put it in the freezer. And my thought was, it was a fairly quick death, and it was, as painful as it possibly could for the animal.
Painless.
And painless for the animal as it possibly could be. And everybody has that decision to make, about an animal. But that's what I did.
Barb wants to know, what is the easiest gecko to handle?
Crested geckos by far. I don't know if can you reach the red one? I don't know if it's going to show on the screen, but I wanted to show a red crested gecko. She is a little bit fired up. We're going to go ahead and grab this one out and see if she'll show on the screen. She's ready to go. Sorry about all that sound and everybody's ear. She is jumpy. Look at this. So this one isn't going to show on the terrible laptop screen here. We'll get this fixed for the next video, hopefully, and there it goes, right across the screen. I'm going to ask Nanette, because I can't get up, if she'll... Okay, hold on. I'll be right back, folks.
Yeah, like on the other side now. Meanwhile, Angie bred wax worms, and she actually ate one. Doesn't surprise me, Angie.
What did you say, Nanette? You're not surprised?
Not surprised at all.
You want to say hi?
Come on over.
Come right here.
Come over here, my grandma. Say hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Say hi to Crystal, everybody.
What's your favorite isopod?
Mine is a dairy cow.
Dairy cows. I would have never guessed that.
And she says, Crystal. Nope, I'm just looking. Okay. Zach wants to know if he can baptize his hatchlings. What?
Does anybody else have any questions? Let's see if anybody else has any questions.
He also wants to know, what is your most embarrassing moment as a gecko owner? Or if you have any drunken reptile convention stories to share. I'd be interested to hear that.
Angie, are you still there with some questions? We're going to cover one of those. We're going to cover most embarrassing gecko stories. So I had a gargoyle that was huge, absolutely huge. I would say that this gargoyle was closing in on 100 grams. So if you know a nice, healthy crested gecko is probably about 50 grams. This female gargoyle was twice the size. and I was at a show and I was showing the gargoyle off, and a couple of people said, "Oh my gosh, that's the biggest gargoyle gecko I've ever seen." And about an hour into the show, I was showing somebody, and then we were talking about something else. So I'd kind of lost eye contact with the gargoyle, and a gargoyle that's out for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. She got tired of me holding her and bit me right on the inside of my finger. And I kept talking to the person that I was talking to, but realized I was dripping blood. So got the gargoyle, put it in the cup, closed my hand, put it in my pocket, talked to the customer. And once that customer left, I handed off to one of my sons that was working the show with me, went into the bathroom, and the whole palm of my hand was red from the blood. So it literally got me at the worst possible spot that it could, and it was just doing what she was wanting to do and telling me that she had it with being held. So um, I got a Band-Aid and covered it, but that was probably my most embarrassing moment with the geckos.
Here you go. You can read this one. Angie wants to know.
Angie.
Right here.
Angie.
Yes.
Crystal is Grandpa's Goofy.
Is Grandpa Goofy, Angie said. Yes.
I resemble that remark.
And then Zach comes back and says, "Good evening, Crystal. Behave for your grandparents."
Can I say something to Zach?
Sure, say something to Zach.
Zach, why did you say that?
He wants to know what the funniest thing your grandparents do. What do we do that's funny?
No bathroom humor.
What do you think is the funniest thing that we do?
You try and make me laugh. Zach. They do silly faces.
Silly faces.
Grandma, show Zach what
No,
I
I'm
do.
not showing my silly faces. Okay, wait, I gotta find another question here.
Can I do it?
Yeah, if we can find one. Hey, House of Invertebrates, we're doing great.
Hey.
Hopefully you are too.
Thanks for joining.
Can I use my one?
I'm looking to see if I've covered everything that was in here. Oh, what's your opinion on payment plans?
I'm sorry, what's that?
What is your opinion on payment plans?
How
And that came from Cosmic
don't hit the team.
Dark Lord.
Oh, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. And I've not been hurt one time with payment plans, and I'll continue to do them. But I guess my opinion is that it works for me. If it doesn't work for other people, and I know a lot of people have been burnt by it, but I think you have to have, number one, if you're going to do them, have your terms down to the absolute lowest amount of detail. If you're going to have a payment plan, have the dates all done before you receive or any kind of a commitment or receive any money. Again, I've done it many times, and I've not had one problem. But again, my terms are very specific, and if somebody bails at the end and they can't make the plan, my terms are very clear with what I'm going to do with that situation. Now, does that mean that I haven't reversed that decision and given money back, or waited longer, or made a kind of a on the fly kind of decision? It's certainly I certainly have done that in the past. But I think that for the first time customer, you don't know the person that well, have as absolutely specific details about your terms as you possibly can, and put them on a web page, put them on your Facebook business page, put them somewhere, send them to the person. Don't just send a link, send those terms to the person and make sure that they absolutely are clear on your terms.
Okay, Zach wants to know, do you think it's a bit irresponsible to buy a pet on a payment plan? His thoughts are, if you can't afford it now, can you afford to care for it? No.
I really don't. There have been some great customers that I've dealt with that have purchased on payment plans, and everybody's tight. I again have right now, because of the cold weather, we have several shipments sitting there waiting to go out, and I know of 2 people on those shipments that had a payment plan back in December and January, paid them off, and now we're just waiting to get those animals to those people. Is it irresponsible? I don't. And everybody's, you've got to look at what you decide. But my feeling, my feeling is that it's not, that people just need sometimes a little bit of time to work with that. Now, would I have a problem if I saw somebody that was on a payment plan post on Facebook that they just purchased a new, TV or another gecko and paid cash for those? And I would have a problem with that. I would feel bad that that would happen, but I'm comfortable with the payment plan simply because it's worked 100% for me in the past.
We've also had some kids that have had to earn the money to get their gecko and have worked with us a couple of times.
Great points.
That have saved up money from doing chores that have been paying off a gecko as well. We have all kinds of questions. What kind of leaves do you use in your isopod tubs?
I'm going to hit these questions as
Really
quick as I can because we're going to go another 5 or 10 minutes here. What kind of leaves? I've tried different leaves. I've worked with people from the southern states with magnolia leaves and with, I can't remember what you call them, small hardwood trees, maple and oak. Hardwood leaves 100%. And from a video that I just did, have your leaves in there, but once they start going down, you can see the isopods start eating them. Don't wait until they're all gone before you add more leaves. They're eating the decayed leaves. That doesn't mean that they're eating, don't use fresh leaves, obviously. You want the dried leaves, but put them in the enclosure. And once you see them start eating, once they start eating a little bit, throw more leaves in there.
Talk to you later, Zach. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks a lot.
Crystal, Ray wants to know what Crystal's favorite gecko is, and he's asking because he wants to figure out a child-friendly gecko. Who's your favorite gecko? What kind? Do you know what it is?
A leopard gecko?
Is it the leopard? Is it a crested? The crested geckos?
We're almost out of time.
No, we can't bring that one up right now tonight.
Can I tell you?
Yeah, go ahead.
The gecko's names?
Sure.
Yeah.
Crystal and Crystal, if you don't know.
She names everything Crystal downstairs.
Yeah, we have about 30 geckos, all with the name of Crystal.
Sometimes. And there's 2 geckos. And he's Ryan.
Elaine wants to know if you help us with the geckos downstairs. Do you help downstairs?
Yes.
A little bit. You don't have a problem handling mealworms or gecko poop? Do you handle gecko poop?
No.
No.
You like the isopods, so don't you? You like helping with them? Okay.
And wait. Someday I will clean the gecko poop.
Someday you will do it.
Yeah.
I'm holding you to that.
Tomorrow.
Oh,
tomorrow. Okay.
Score.
Like I'm gonna read another one.
Okay. Have you started your bioactive enclosures yet? Angie wants to know.
I haven't. I'm so bad at this. I want everything to be perfect. I want the camera setup to be perfect. I'm just going to do it. And in fact, tomorrow, I'm going to throw this out there, Angie, and you can hold it to me. Tomorrow, I'll do at least 1, maybe 2 bioactive enclosures.
There was an isopod. What isopod have you had a hard time with, and how did you correct that issue?
So hold on just a second, okay? The one that I've had the most difficulty with, I'll name 2 of them. Porcellio magnificus and Porcellio bolivari. Bolivari, I had some, I lost almost all of them, and I got maybe 2 or 3 babies, and got back up to 5, after about 4 or 5 months. Those 5 just recently produced more babies, and now I have a good group of probably 30 or 40 animals. The other one is magnificus. I got down to 3 animals, 1 male and 2 females. And you can anyways, to make it quick, I got down to just 2, and now I found like 3 or 4 babies in the bin. So I've really struggled with those. The biggest thing is, I think initially I was trying to miss the whole enclosure, and I stopped doing that. But you really, really, really have to have that dry area. You can't have half of a tank that's dry. You have to have like all the tank. And what I found best was have a piece of wood that's concaved and put it all the way from the dry side all the way to the moist side, and they'll find the gradient that they need. They need to be off of the ground. They need to be off of that substrate.
Hannah would like to know what upcoming expos you're going to be at.
I'll be at the Green Bay Northern Reptile Exotic Reptile Show, and I'll be at the Show Me Reptiles Show in Janesville coming up. I'll be attending Sewerfest in Tinley coming up next month, Tinley, but won't be vending them. And I'll be at the Wire shows. I don't think Jim has put out dates for the Wire shows yet. The Wire is Madison. Sewerfest I won't be vending, but I'll be there. If anybody's looking for animals, consistently people will call me and ask me to bring animals. What are you doing? I only bring a few animals. I don't, I try to limit the animals that I bring down, but if you're looking for some isopods or some geckos, let me know.
Curtis says, can you film your bioactive enclosure setup? You will be doing that, won't you?
Yes. Absolutely. Thanks.
Do you ever go to Michigan? Ray wants to know.
I haven't in a long time. Love Michigan.
Haven't done a show though.
I haven't done a show since our tropical fish, actually, since I did tropical fish and realized that there was a time difference in shows and almost missed entering the fish in the show by about 5 minutes. We'll go a couple more questions, Nanette, and let everybody go for the evening. This has been a blast doing this. I really appreciate everybody joining.
I think that's everything that I'm seeing here right now. Have you started your...
Somebody has do you have any, I'm sorry, for period or bastardite care tips. Yeah, let me real quick. I have a video on that, and you can find that video, on my Supreme Gecko channel, period or bastardite. But the biggest thing with them is treat them like isopods. Literally, have a dry area, have a moist area, have hides underneath both or at both, so that they can gradient themselves and go where they want to go. Be very gentle with the eggs. Run your fingers through the dirt, through the substrate, but make sure that you have a dirt combined with like a Zilla jungle mix substrate. They like to be a little warmer, but that's pretty much it. Babies are not terribly difficult, not like the Androyensis.
Ray wanted to know, what kind of setup do you recommend for morning geckos, and does he have to worry about them reproducing until they overpopulate the enclosure?
Setup for morning geckos, I think that the one suggestion that I would have for morning geckos would be to sorry for the notifications here, folks. The suggestion that I would have for morning geckos is have a nice size enclosure. Don't go too small. So maybe a 5-gallon at the very smallest, but 10 is much better. But also more morning geckos is better than too few geckos. So one morning gecko will breed, but if you have 2 or 3 in your enclosure, you'll find more. You'll find more breeding activity.
That's all I think I have. Sorry if I missed anybody's question, but I think we got them all.
Let me ask everybody, if you haven't hit that like button yet, go ahead and hit the like button. I really, really appreciate everybody joining me. I'll work on the video quality for the next session. If you have any other questions, please leave them at the Supreme Gecko business page on Facebook or our Wally Kern Facebook page. You want to say goodnight? What do you want to do?
I want to say something.
Go ahead.
What are you going to say?
Give a big thumbs up and hit that like button and some people did this and turn on
Notifications?
notifications. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Good night.
Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, guys. I hope you liked that video.